My husband's yoga instructor left a pregnancy test in our bathroom. At his promotion celebration, I gifted him baby clothes and said, "For your upcoming delivery, the divorce papers are inside." His father handed me the keys to their lake house. I found it while organizing the bathroom cabinet. A small rectangular box wedged behind Mark's shaving cream and a bottle of my prenatal vitamins. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out, the words, "Early Response Pregnancy Test," staring back at me. For a split second, impossible hope fluttered in my chest. Had I bought this during one of my desperate late-night pharmacy runs and forgotten about it? But I knew my own habits too well. I kept my tests in the basket under the sink, neatly lined up like soldiers awaiting deployment. This one was different, hidden, tucked away, and used. The protective wrapper lay crumpled inside the box, and when I tipped it over, the plastic test stick slid into my palm. 2 pink lines. Positive. If you've ever felt that gut-wrenching moment when something doesn't add up in your relationship, you're not alone. Stories like Caroline's journey from betrayal to self-discovery help us navigate our own difficult truths. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing. It's completely free and connects you with others who understand that sometimes finding your breath means first confronting what's suffocating you. Let's continue Caroline's story. I sank to the cold tile floor, the test clutched in my hand as 3 years of fertility treatments flashed through my mind. The endless hormone injections that left my stomach bruised and tender. The scheduled intimacy that transformed our bedroom from a sanctuary to a clinical staging ground. The hushed conversations with Dr. Feldman about egg quality and sperm motility, terms that had become as familiar to me as my own name. "You're still young, Caroline," he'd reassured me at our last appointment. 35 isn't old in fertility terms. We just need to find the right protocol. But Mark had been pulling away from each new treatment plan, his enthusiasm waning as our savings dwindled. "Maybe we should take a break," he'd suggested last month. "Give your body time to reset." I'd agreed reluctantly, thinking he was concerned for my well-being. Now the evidence of his true concern lay cold against my skin. When headlights swept across the bathroom window, I straightened up. Mark was home. I tucked the test into the pocket of my robe and splashed cold water on my face, studying my reflection. My eyes were too bright, my skin pale. I looked like what I was, a woman on the edge of shattering. "Caro? You home?" His voice echoed from downstairs, casual and light. As if he hadn't hidden another woman's pregnancy test in our bathroom. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself, gripping the edge of the sink. Was this actually happening? My wedding ring caught the light, the small diamond Mark had promised to upgrade when we make partner. 6 years and 2 promotions later, the same modest ring remained while he drove a new Tesla. "Upstairs," I called back, my voice impressively normal. He appeared in the doorway moments later, his gym bag slung over his shoulder, dark hair still damp from what I assumed was a post-workout shower. Always considerate, my husband never wanting to bring his sweat home to me. "You okay? You look pale." His brow furrowed with what seemed like genuine concern. I held out the test, watching his expression carefully. "I found this." His face traveled through a series of micro-expressions so quickly I almost missed them. Shock, panic, calculation, and finally, confusion. "What's this?" He took it from me, turning it over in his hands as if he'd never seen a pregnancy test before. Which was laughable, considering how many times he'd sat beside me as we waited for lines to appear. "Don't." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Just don't. Caro, I don't know what you're thinking, but it was hidden behind your shaving cream. It's positive. And it's not mine." Each word felt like glass in my throat. Mark's face settled into something approaching earnest concern. "It must be old. From when we were trying before the last treatment cycle. I keep mine in the basket. You know that. And this is recent. The expiration date on the box is next year." My voice remained steady while my world splintered around me. "Then I don't know how it got there." He shrugged, reaching to pull me into a hug that I sidestepped. "Maybe the cleaning lady has issues she's hiding from her husband? Maria is 62, Mark. And she's been widowed for 5 years. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "Then I don't know what to tell you. You're clearly looking for something that isn't there." That's when I noticed it, the scent. Not his usual sandalwood cologne, but something lighter, feminine. Lavender and something citrusy. The same scent that lingered in our living room every Tuesday and Thursday after his private yoga sessions. "How's Amber doing these days?" I asked, the name falling between us like a stone. His face stilled. "What?" "Your yoga instructor. The one who comes to the house twice a week while I'm at work. The one whose perfume you're wearing right now." "Don't be ridiculous, Caroline." He ran a hand through his hair, his tailwind lying. "Amber is a wellness professional. She's helping me with stress management so I can be more present. For us." "For us," I repeated, a hollow laugh escaping me. "Is she pregnant, Mark? This conversation is insane." He tossed the test into the trash can. "I'm going to shower and change. We can talk when you're thinking clearly." I stood frozen as he walked past me. The bathroom suddenly felt suffocating, the walls pressing in. On autopilot, I retrieved the test from the trash, wrapped it in tissue and placed it in my jewelry box. Evidence of a crime committed against our marriage. Downstairs, I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive Cabernet we'd been saving for a special occasion. 3 years of avoiding alcohol during fertility treatment cycles had left me with a low tolerance, and the wine hit my empty stomach with alarming speed. I found myself scrolling through our shared photo album on my phone, stopping on images from our anniversary trip to Napa Valley last year. There was Mark, arm around my waist, both of us smiling against a backdrop of vineyards. Was he already seeing her then? Was I already being replaced? When he came downstairs in fresh clothes, hair still wet from his second shower of the evening, I was sitting at the kitchen island, my laptop open to Amber's Instagram page. 28 years old. Certified yoga instructor. Recent posts featuring green smoothies, challenging poses on the beach, and inspirational quotes about manifesting your true path. "What are you doing?" Mark's voice was tight. "Getting to know the woman who's apparently carrying your child." I didn't look up from the screen. "She's very bendy." "This is crazy, Caroline. I'm not having an affair with Amber. She's my yoga instructor. Who comes to our house for private sessions." I scrolled to an image of her in a sports bra, demonstrating what the caption called, "breath work for anxiety relief." "Because the studio is crowded and distracting. You're making connections that don't exist." He grabbed a beer from the fridge, his movements sharp with frustration. "I've been working 60-hour weeks to make partner. When exactly do you think I'm conducting this elaborate affair?" The question hung in the air between us. It was reasonable, logical, but the test in my jewelry box wasn't a product of my imagination. That night, Mark fell asleep almost immediately, his breathing deep and even. I lay awake beside him, thinking of the extra shower, the subtle scent of lavender, the way he'd tossed the evidence away so casually. At 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed and took my laptop to the guest room, where I spent hours researching divorce attorneys in our area. By dawn, I had a short list of names and a hollow pit in my stomach where 13 years of marriage used to be. I watched the sun rise through the guest room window, feeling the strange clarity that comes with absolute certainty. My husband was having an affair with his yoga instructor. She was pregnant. And I had decisions to make. I couldn't confront Mark with nothing but a pregnancy test and suspicions. I needed proof, irrefutable evidence that would hold up when he inevitably tried to twist the narrative. So I became a detective in my own marriage, a role I never imagined playing. 3 days after finding the test, I called in sick to work and parked my car 2 blocks from our house. From there, I watched Mark leave for what should have been the office, but instead he drove in the opposite direction. I followed at a careful distance, thanking the universe for my nondescript gray sedan against his flashy Tesla. 30 minutes later, I watched him pull into the parking lot of Westlake Women's Clinic, the same fertility center where we'd spent countless hours together. My stomach clenched as I slid lower in my seat, watching him check his phone before heading inside. 10 minutes later, Amber emerged from her white Jeep, a hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Even from a distance, I could see the smile that lit up her face when she spotted Mark waiting by the entrance. They embraced with the easy intimacy of established lovers before disappearing inside. I sat frozen in my car, knuckles white against the steering wheel. The prenatal vitamins in our bathroom suddenly made sense. Not mine at all, but kept there for her visits. How many times had she been in our home, using our shower, maybe even sleeping in our bed? Taking a deep breath, I pulled out my phone and did something I'd never done before. I opened our cell phone account and clicked on Mark's detailed call history. There it was. A number called or texted almost daily, sometimes multiple times, often late at night when he claimed to be working. I saved the number, created a new contact labeled A, and continued my search. Our shared cloud storage was next. Mark had always insisted we keep our photos backed up together, in case something happens to one of our phones. Scrolling through the most recent uploads, I found nothing suspicious until I noticed a folder titled Workout Progress. Inside were dozens of photos of Amber in various yoga poses, some in what was unmistakably our living room. The most recent photo, timestamped 2 days ago, showed her seated on our couch, smiling at the camera, her hand resting on a slightly rounded belly. My hands shook as I forwarded the most damning photos to my personal email, evidence accumulating like storm clouds. The next morning I feigned sleep as Mark prepared for work. The moment his car left the driveway, I went to his home office and woke his laptop. We knew each other's passwords, or at least I thought we did. His usual combination of our wedding date and first dog's name no longer worked. 3 failed attempts later, I sat back, a bitter laugh escaping me. Another wall between us I hadn't noticed being built. But Mark had always been careless with his phone, often leaving it unattended while showering. That evening, when the bathroom door closed and the shower started, I made my move. His phone lit up with my fingerprint. He hadn't bothered to remove it from the recognized users. The text thread with Amber Wellness opened before me, thousands of messages stretching back 8 months. Can't stop thinking about this morning, a recent text from Mark read. You and our little bean are my whole world. We need to talk timing, she'd replied. I can't keep hiding this much longer and my lease is up next month. I scrolled frantically, screenshots forgotten as I absorbed their plans taking shape. What if Caroline won't agree to divorce? She will. The fertility treatments aren't working and she's too career-focused anyway. She'll be relieved. I'm scared, Em. What if you change your mind when it gets real? Never. You're my future. Both of you. The shower shut off. I quickly placed the phone back where I'd found it, my whole body trembling with adrenaline and rage. That night, I contacted Helen Sharp, the divorce attorney highest on my research list. Standard procedure, she assured me the next day in her sleek downtown office. If you suspect financial impropriety, we'll need to move quickly to document everything. The private investigator she recommended wasn't cheap, but he was thorough. Within a week, he delivered a folder containing photos of Mark and Amber at restaurants, entering a modern apartment building downtown, and shopping at high-end baby boutiques. The timeline he constructed showed their affair had begun during my second round of IVF. While I was pumping myself full of hormones and praying for our baby, Mark was creating one with someone else. But the financial evidence proved most shocking. The investigator had uncovered a separate checking account Mark had opened 6 months earlier. Regular transfers from our joint savings, labeled as investment opportunities, had built up a substantial balance. He'd also applied for a mortgage pre-approval using only his income. He's setting up a life without you, Helen stated bluntly, and using your shared assets to do it. I felt strangely calm reviewing the evidence, as if watching someone else's marriage dissolve. What's my best move now? Document everything but don't confront him yet. We want to be strategic about timing. The following weekend, while Mark was supposedly at a corporate golf retreat, I methodically photographed all our financial documents, made copies of tax returns and cataloged every asset we owned together. The woman in the mirror looked unfamiliar, determined, focused, dangerous. On Monday, Mark returned home in high spirits. Great news, Caro. The partnership committee moved up my review. The promotion announcement is this Friday at the corporate gala. That's wonderful, I replied, accepting his celebratory kiss on my cheek with a smile that felt like broken glass. What should I wear? While he showered, I quickly checked his suit jacket pockets, an invasion of privacy that no longer bothered me. Inside the inner pocket, I found a crumpled receipt from Baby Blessing's boutique for a tiny set of pajamas with Daddy's Little Co-Pilot embroidered across the front. The date showed he'd purchased them just hours earlier, probably on his way home. I carefully replaced the receipt, a strange calm settling over me. His promotion celebration would now serve a dual purpose, one he couldn't possibly anticipate. After all, what better place to expose a betrayal than in front of everyone whose opinion he valued most? I needed caffeine and solitude to plan my next steps. The morning after discovering the baby clothes receipt, I drove to Elmwood, the quaint neighborhood 20 minutes from our home where Mark would never venture. Too hipster for his corporate aesthetic. The Blue Cup was a tiny cafe tucked between a used bookstore and a vintage record shop. The kind of place that made pour-overs with excruciating precision and didn't offer syrups or whipped cream. I had just settled at a corner table with my courtier when the bell above the door chimed. Richard Wright entered, his tall frame commanding attention despite his casual demeanor. My father-in-law, unexpectedly separate from his usual country club habitat. I shrank in my seat, not ready for forced pleasantries with any member of Mark's family, but his eyes found mine immediately. Caroline. His silver eyebrows lifted in surprise. What brings you to my secret hideaway? Before I could fabricate an excuse, tears welled up without warning. I blinked rapidly, mortified at my sudden lack of composure in front of this man who had always seemed more business partner than family. Richard had maintained a polite distance since our wedding, attending holiday gatherings with appropriate gifts and inquiries about my work, but never pushing for deeper connection. He hesitated only briefly before sliding into the chair opposite mine. What's happened? Perhaps it was the gentle concern in his voice, so unlike his son's recent coldness. Or maybe it was simply exhaustion from carrying my terrible knowledge alone. Whatever the reason, the truth spilled out between stifled sobs and whispered confessions. The pregnancy test, the prenatal appointment, the text messages, the separate accounts. I expected disbelief, defensiveness. Instead, a strange expression crossed Richard's weathered face, recognition followed by a resigned sadness. He's his mother's son after all, he said quietly, staring into the middle distance. I had hoped, but patterns repeat, don't they? What do you mean? Richard's hands wrapped around his untouched coffee mug. Elizabeth left us when Mark was 14. Not for another man as I let everyone believe, but for her yoga instructor. A woman named Serena. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Mark never told me. No, he wouldn't have. He constructed a convenient narrative that his mother abandoned us for her career in California. Easier than facing the truth. But you never corrected it? Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. What father wants to admit he didn't see the signs? That his wife was living a double life under his roof? That he wasn't enough? I leaned forward. You knew about Mark and Amber. Suspected. Mark's been bringing her to the firm's events as his wellness consultant. The way he looks at her. He shook his head. I recognized it because I once looked at Elizabeth the same way. Why didn't you warn me? I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. Would you have believed me? Without evidence. Richard sighed. Besides, I thought, hoped, marriage to someone as grounded as you might break the cycle. That he'd make different choices than his mother. We sat in silence, two people connected by the same betrayal across generations. I felt an unexpected kinship with this man who had always seemed so remote. What will you do now? Richard finally asked. I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to file for divorce. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. But first, I'm going to attend his promotion celebration on Friday. Something shifted in Richard's expression. A gleam of respect, perhaps even approval. The entire executive team will be there. Including me. I know. That's why I'm going. Richard leaned back, studying me with new interest. You're planning something. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. He doesn't get to sculpt the narrative this time. Everyone will know exactly why our marriage ended. To my surprise, Richard nodded slowly. Kenneth Davies is particularly old-fashioned about family values. As CEO, he's been championing Mark's promotion specifically because he presents the image of a devoted husband supporting his wife through fertility challenges. It's become something of a talking point among the board. I hadn't known this, that Mark had been using our painful struggle as leverage for his career advancement. The knowledge hardened my resolve. The gala is black tie, Richard continued, a tactical edge entering his voice. Kenneth's wife Janet will be seated at your table. She wields considerable influence over her husband's opinions of character. We spent the next hour strategizing, Richard offering insider information about company dynamics I would never have known. Who would support Mark unconditionally? Which board members had daughters Mark had made uncomfortable with lingering glances? Which executive assistants had complained about his demanding tone? You understand I'm helping you destroy my son's chance at partnership, Richard said as we prepared to leave. Why would you do that? He stood straighter, suddenly looking every bit the successful businessman who had built Wright Consulting from nothing. Because consequences shape character, Caroline. Mark never faced any for his mother's abandonment. I sheltered him, compensated with material things, blamed myself. Perhaps that was my first mistake. In the parking lot, Richard reached into his pocket and withdrew a set of keys. The lake house in Tahoe. It's peaceful this time of year. I stared at the keys, confused. Why would I need? You'll need somewhere to go after Friday. Somewhere Mark can't follow. I shook my head. I couldn't impose. It's not imposing when it's family. Richard pressed the keys into my palm. And you were always more of a Wright than he was, Caroline. My throat tightened at the unexpected alliance, this lifeline thrown from such an unexpected quarter. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Richard replied, his expression hardening as he glanced at his watch. We have 3 days to prepare your exit. And if I know my son, he won't make it easy once he realizes what's happening. I drove home with the lake house keys heavy in my pocket, mentally cataloging what I would need to pack secretly before Friday. For the first time since finding the pregnancy test, I felt something beyond despair. A fierce determination strengthened by knowing I wasn't standing alone. The 3 days before the gala passed in a blur of covert preparations. I had my hair done at an upscale salon, opting for a sleek chignon that elongated my neck and highlighted my cheekbones. A style Mark had always said made me look too severe. My dress, a midnight blue column with a subtle slit, had been purchased months ago for this very occasion. Now it served a different purpose entirely. Richard texted me the gala's seating chart, allowing me to mentally prepare for the evening's confrontation. I packed an overnight bag and left it in my car trunk, ready for my escape to Tahoe after the event. Helen had the divorce papers prepared, printed on premium stationery and tucked into a slim folder that fit perfectly into the gift box I'd prepared. Mark left early on Friday, needing to prepare a few things at the office before the celebration. I took my time getting ready, applying makeup with precision I normally reserved for court appearances. When I fastened my grandmother's sapphire earrings, something old, something blue, I caught myself following the bridal tradition and laughed bitterly at the irony. The Westlake Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers and success when I arrived. I handed my wrap to the coat check and spotted Mark immediately, holding court near the bar, surrounded by admiring colleagues. He hadn't noticed me yet. Beside him stood Amber, her yoga-toned body draped in a form-fitting emerald dress that subtly accommodated her small baby bump. She was laughing at something he said, one hand resting possessively on his arm. "Champagne, ma'am." A server appeared with a tray. "No thank you. Sparkling water with lime, please." I needed absolute clarity tonight. Richard materialized at my elbow, distinguished in his tuxedo. "Caroline, you look formidable." "I feel it," I replied, accepting the water another server brought. "Is everything in place?" Kenneth's speech begins at 8, followed by the partner announcements. "You're at table 6 with Janet as promised." His eyes traveled to the gift box tucked under my arm. "Is that what I think it is?" "And more." I offered a thin smile. "Did you speak with the photographer?" "He'll be positioned to capture everything. For the company newsletter, of course." Our conspiratorial moment was interrupted by Mark's sudden appearance. His eyes widened slightly at seeing us together. "Dad. Caroline. You've found each other." He kissed my cheek, his cologne mingling with a now familiar undertone of lavender. "You're late, Caro. I was getting worried." "I wouldn't miss this for anything," I replied, my smile tight. Mark's gaze flicked to the wrapped package. "What's that?" "Your celebration gift. For later." Before he could respond, Kenneth Davies approached, his wife Janet beside him. "Mark, they're ready for us to take our seats." "Ah, and this must be Caroline. I've heard so much about your strength through these difficult times." I shook his offered hand, noting the way Mark shifted uncomfortably beside me. "That's very kind. I believe in facing difficult situations head-on." "Admirable quality," Janet commented, linking her arm with mine as we moved toward the tables. "Mark tells us you've been quite the soldier through all the fertility challenges." I let my smile falter just enough to show vulnerability. "It's been a journey with unexpected turns." At our table, I found myself seated between Janet and a senior partner's wife, with Mark directly across from me. Amber had been placed at a peripheral table with other plus ones, much to her visible disappointment. Throughout dinner, I participated in conversation with practiced ease while observing Mark's frequent glances toward Amber's table. Kenneth's speech praised the firm's accomplishments over champagne and dessert. "And now, the moment we've been waiting for," he announced. "I'm pleased to welcome our newest partner, a man whose dedication to both his clients and his family values represents everything our firm stands for, Mark Wright." Applause erupted as Mark approached the podium, beaming with the confidence of a man who believed he had everything under control. I waited, the gift box heavy in my lap as he delivered his acceptance speech. "I wouldn't be here without the support of my incredible wife, Caroline," he said, raising his glass toward me. "Through personal challenges and professional demands, she's been my rock." Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd. I lifted my water glass in acknowledgement, locking eyes with him across the room. "And I'd also like to thank my wellness coach Amber Jensen," Mark continued, gesturing toward her table. "Her guidance has helped me maintain balance during stressful times." On cue, Richard stood and clinked his glass. "As Mark's father and founding partner, I'd like to propose a special moment. Caroline has prepared something to mark this milestone." All eyes turned to me as I rose, gift box in hand. The walk to the podium felt endless, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Mark's smile remained fixed, though confusion flickered in his eyes. 13 years ago, I married a man I thought I knew," I began, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. "Tonight, I'm honored to present him with something that represents both our past and his future." I handed him the box, watching as he unwrapped it with growing uncertainty. His expression collapsed from confusion to horror as he lifted the tiny Daddy's Little Co-Pilot outfit, the very one from the receipt I'd found. "Congratulations are in order," I continued, addressing the now silent room. "Not just on making partner, but on Mark's upcoming delivery. A new baby and a new life." Gasps rippled through the audience. Mark's face drained of color as he discovered the divorce papers tucked into the outfit's hidden pocket. "Unfortunately, I won't be part of that delivery. But I'm sure Amber will make an excellent mother." On cue, all eyes turned to Amber, who had risen halfway from her seat, her hand protectively covering her stomach. "This is inappropriate," Mark hissed, grabbing my elbow. I pulled away, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. "What's inappropriate is promising to leave your wife for months while using her fertility struggles as a sympathy card for promotion." "Mark said you knew." Amber's voice rang out suddenly. "He told me you had an arrangement, that you were staying married in name only until after his partnership came through." Kenneth Davies stood abruptly, his face thunderous. "Right, my office. First thing Monday." As security discreetly approached, several women from the executive team, including 2 senior partners I recognized from Richard's descriptions, moved to form a protective semicircle around me. "Let's get you some air," offered Diane Keller, the firm's most senior female partner, guiding me toward the exit as whispers erupted throughout the ballroom. I caught Richard's eye as we left, his slight nod confirming what we both knew. Mark's carefully constructed world had just collapsed entirely, in exactly the public manner he had always feared most. Diane Keller walked me to my car, her arms steady around my shoulders. "That was the most spectacular takedown I've ever witnessed," she said with undisguised admiration. "I've been hoping someone would expose Mark's true character for years." "Thank you for stepping in," I replied, fumbling for my keys. My hands were surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "We protect our own." She handed me her business card. "Call me when you're ready to talk about returning to law. A litigator with your backbone would be an asset to our firm." I hadn't practiced law since marrying Mark and joining his company's legal department, a compromise that had gradually morphed into abandoning my career entirely. The possibility of returning to courtroom work felt like recovering a lost limb. That night, I drove straight to Tahoe, watching the city lights recede in my rearview mirror. The winding mountain roads demanded my full attention, leaving no mental space for replaying the night's events. By the time I pulled up to Richard's, my lake house, exhaustion had numbed the edges of my emotions. The cabin was larger than I remembered from our few weekend visits, its timber frame silhouetted against the starlit sky. Inside, I found fresh linens on the beds, firewood stacked neatly, and the refrigerator stocked with essentials. Richard had prepared for my arrival with characteristic thoroughness. I slept dreamlessly that first night, waking to sunlight filtering through pine trees and the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. No alarms, no schedule, no performance necessary. Just me and the water and the mountains. My phone had accumulated 37 missed calls and 29 texts, most from Mark, a few from concerned friends who had heard garbled versions of the story, and one from Richard confirming he would handle the immediate fallout. I silenced all notifications except his and my lawyer's, then made coffee to enjoy on the deck. The divorce proceedings moved with surprising efficiency. Mark didn't contest the separation, perhaps understanding the optics would only worsen if he fought. His partnership offer had been rescinded, though Kenneth had stopped short of firing him outright, likely due to Richard's influence. 2 weeks into my lake house exile, Richard arrived with a folder of documents. "You might want to review these," he said, spreading them across the kitchen island. "Property deeds. Transfer documents." The lake house had been moved out of the Wright family trust and into my name exclusively. "I can't accept this," I protested, staring at the paperwork. "It's too much." Richard's expression remained implacable. "Consider it compensation for time served. Mark used your shared assets to finance his affair. This merely balances the scales. It's worth millions." "Yes." He poured himself a cup of coffee, his movements unhurried. "I've had a long and prosperous career, Caroline. No one needs 3 vacation properties. Besides, you're the only one who ever appreciated this place properly." I remembered the weekends I'd spent here while Mark remained in the city for urgent work matters, now revealed as assignations with Amber. I'd kayaked alone on the lake, hiked the surrounding trails, and fallen in love with the peaceful isolation that Mark had always found boring. "Thank you," I finally said, accepting both the gift and the symbolic severance it represented from my old life. A month into my residency, a courier delivered a package from Westlake Fertility Center. Inside was a letter from Dr. Feldman expressing regret about my personal situation and offering to continue my fertility journey independently if I wished. Accompanying the letter was a catalog of donor profiles. Men whose genetic material could help create the child I'd spent years hoping for. I spread the profiles across my dining table, studying faces and backgrounds with clinical detachment. Engineer. Physician. Musician. Figure. Men willing to offer the one thing Mark had withheld. The possibility of motherhood without conditions or betrayal. For 3 days, the donor profiles remained untouched while I considered my options. On the 4th morning, I woke before dawn and paddled my kayak to the center of the still lake. As the sun crested the mountains, painting the water in gold and crimson, I realized I wasn't ready to make that decision from a place of reaction or revenge. If I chose motherhood, it would be because I genuinely wanted it for myself, not because I'd been denied it by Mark's duplicity. I returned the profiles to their folder, neither accepting nor rejecting the possibility. For now it was enough to breathe without the weight of failed expectations. Summer turned to fall, and the aspens surrounding the lake blazed in yellow splendor. I had established a comfortable routine. Morning swims, afternoon hikes, evenings spent rediscovering my passion for environmental law through remote consulting work for Diane's firm. The divorce was nearly finalized when Mark's Tesla appeared in my driveway one October afternoon. He looked diminished, his designer suit hanging loosely on his frame, dark circles shadowing his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," I said from the porch, making no move to invite him inside. "I had to see you." His voice cracked with emotion that once would have moved me. "Amber lost the baby. She's gone back to San Diego." I absorbed this information, surprised by the absence of satisfaction I felt at his misfortune. "I'm sorry for your loss. I made a terrible mistake, Caroline. I see that now." He took a tentative step forward. "We could try again. Start fresh." "There is no we anymore, Mark. We've been through so much together. 13 years. That has to count for something." Desperation etched his voice. "I still love you." I studied him, this man I had once built my world around. I could see the calculation behind his remorse, the convenient timing of his return now that his other option had evaporated. Once I might have mistaken it for genuine contrition. "Go home, Mark. Your father is expecting you for dinner." "Hi, father." He laughed bitterly. "He hasn't spoken to me since the gala. He's taking your side in all this." "There are no sides anymore. Just consequences." I watched him drive away, waiting for the familiar ache of loss that never materialized. Instead, I felt only a profound sense of closure. That evening, I walked to the end of my dock as the sun began its descent behind the mountains. The lake stretched before me, its surface painted in amber and rose. Birds called to one another across the water, their voices clear in the crisp autumn air. I filled my lungs with the scent of pine and wood smoke, breathing deeply without the constriction of doubt or inadequacy that had become so familiar I'd stopped noticing its presence. For the first time in years, my breath came easily, unhindered by the weight of someone else's betrayal. Standing alone at the edge of the water, I realized I no longer felt incomplete or insufficient. The future stretched before me, undefined, unplanned, and entirely my own. I exhaled slowly, watching my breath form a cloud in the cooling air. Then I turned toward the warm light of my home, taking one step, then another, into whatever came next.